Thank you, darling. Page 332. 332. Yedid nefesh aparachaman meshochatecha el ritzonecha yarut abecha k'moaya yishachave el muhadorota yeradlo yedidutecha menofetzu bekotam Adonai Zivaolam Nafshi cholat avatecha Ana elna refanala Beharot la noam zivcha as titkazek v'titrape v'haitala simchat olam yadadai-dai-dai-dai 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 yadadai-dai-dai yadadai-dai-dai-dai yadadai-dai-dai-dai dai-dai-dai-dai yadadai-dai-dai 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 yadadai-dai-dai. Verse number 3. Vatif yehemu narahamecha v'husana al ben ahuvecha tivekama nifsof nifsati lirot tiferet uzecha ana eli hamdat libi husana ve'anati talam higalena utros haviri ala nismechaba maherahu kiva moed befonenu kimei olam yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai 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 yada dai dai dai. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is so nice to see some of you here in person and to know that there are just as many, if not more, online. Welcome to Temple Sinai. My name is Rabbi Sarah Zober. I am one half of the rabbinic team here, actually with our wonderful emerita, Rabbi Myra Zober, and my husband, who is feeling much better than he was when last I was up here on the bima. And it is just such a pleasure to be back here in our new secular year. If you are online, I'm going to take a moment to advise you to go to sinaireno.org/live if you're not already there, and to download our virtual Siddur. I know some of you here like bringing your iPads. Bonnie's actually not here, sitting here with her iPad as she usually is. So please feel free to download that. It will have all of the prayers that you need for tonight's service, and all of our Torah portion and everything that you can follow along with us, just as if you were here in the building with us. If you are here in person, thank you so much for masking. I didn't have to talk to anybody, and it was lovely. We believe very strongly in pikuach nefesh, in making sure that each of us is safe and hearty and whole at every possible moment. And thank you all for masking and allowing us all to be safe in this sanctuary. Our first thing that we are going to do this evening is that we are going to light Shabbat candles. I'm actually going to invite Laura Smith up to light our Shabbat candles, please. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen. Thank you, Laura. We are going to continue on page 12, L'chune Ranena. At the beginning of Shabbat, we try to sing some psalms to warm up, to shed all of the stress of the last week, which if you had a last week like I did, it was a considerable amount of stress. So please take this time to shed some of that, to shake out all of the cobwebs and all of the tension that our week has given us. Page 12, L'chune Ranena. L'chune ranena, yai dai 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 dai, l'Adonai, yada dai 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 dai, Naria, yai dai 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 dai, letzor yishenu, yada dai dai dai. Nekadma fana betoda Bizmirot narialo Yadadai, dai, 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 dai. Ki el gadol Adonai, Adonai. Umelech gadol kol Elohim, Elohim. Bechuneranana, yai, dai, 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 dai. L'Adonai, yadadai, dai, 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 dai. Naria, yai, dai, 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 dai. Letzor Yishenu, yadadai, dai, 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 dai. Yadadai, dai, 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 dai. Yadadai, dai, 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 dai. As is our custom, on the evening of Shabbat, we welcome the Sabbath bride into our midst, along with the setting sun. It's been a little while since the sunset here, but we will sing a belated L'Chadodi. You can find the lyrics on page 20. As is our custom, we will sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. I'm going to have to do verse 4 before my husband comes back because he'll never let me do it. So 1, 2, 5, and 9. No, he totally will. 1, 2, 5, and 9. And on the 9th and final verse, if you are able, please rise in body and spirit, face our exterior doors, and bow with us to welcome Boi Kala, come, O bride, into our midst. Page 20, L'Chadodi. L'Chadodi, L'Krat Kala, Yadadai, 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 L'Shabbat, L'Kabbalat. L'Chadodi, L'Krat Kala, Yadadai, 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 Shabbat nekabela Shamor bezachor beribor echad Kishmianu el kamiyukad Adonai echad Ushmo echad V'shemo tiferet Malita hila L'Chadodi L'Krat Kala Yadadai 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 L'Shabbat L'Kabbalat L'Chadodi L'Krat Kala Yadadai 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 L'Shabbat L'Kabbalat L'Krat Shabbat Tefu V'nechad Ki Mekor HaBracha Nerosh Mikedem Nesucha Sof Ma'aseh B'machshavat Shahila L'Chadodi L'Krat Kala Yadadai 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 L'Shabbat L'Kabbalat L'Chadodi L'Krat Kala Yadadai 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 L'Shabbat L'Kabbalat Hitorari Hitorari Kiva Orek Kumi Ori 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 Shir Daberi Kevod Adonai Alayech Nigla L'Chadodi L'Krat Kala Yadadai 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 L'Shabbat L'Kabbalat L'Chadodi L'Krat Kala Yadadai 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 L'Shabbat L'Kabbalat Boi v'shalom Ateret bala sola toch emurne am segula bowi khala lechato dili kratkala yadadai ne Shabbat ne Kabbalat lechato dili kratkala yadadai ne Shabbat ne Kabbalat. Now, please remain standing, and we will turn to page 26 for the Chatzi Kaddish as we go into our Kriyat Shema, our evening prayer before the Shema. Yitzkadal v'yitzkadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma dibra chirutei v'yamlich machutei B'chayechon v'yom echon U'chayedechu Beit Yisrael Bagala U'bizman kariv V'meru Amen. Yahei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam Olam Me'amaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitba'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei D'Kudesha B'richu Le'ela Min Kol Berchata V'shirata Tushbachata V'nechemata Damiran Be'alma Ve'yemeru Amen. We turn to page 28 for the Baruch Hu. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach We turn to page 30 for the Ma'ariv Aravim. Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Asher Bidvaro Ma'ariv Aravim, B'chochma Poteach Sha'arim, Uvitvuna Meshane Itim, Umachalif et Hazmanim, Umsader et HaKochavim, B'mishmarotehem Barakia Kirtsono, Borei Yom V'layla, Golel Or Mipnei Choshech, V'choshech Mipnei Or, Umavir Yom Umevi Laila, Umavdil Ben Yom Uvein Laila, Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, El Chai V'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Ata Adonai, HaMa'ariv Aravim. Ahavat Olam can be found on the next page. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amahavta Torah Mitzvot Chukim U'Mishpatim Otanu Limadata Al Ken Adonai We turn to the Shema on page 34. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Avad. You may be seated. The Ahavta can be found on the next page. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol lavavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha Vishinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, b'shivtecha b'veitecha, u'v'lechtecha v'derech, u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha, u'kshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, Uvisharecha Laman Tizkeruhu Vasitem et Kol Mitzvotai Vitem Kedoshim Elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher Hotzeiti Etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim Lihiot Lachem Le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Emet. We turn to page 39 at the bottom, and we read responsively. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt, we were delivered. At Sinai, we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again, we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. Michamocha can be found on page 40. Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Michamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osefele, Nora tehilot osefele malchutecha ra'uvanecha bokei ayam bifnei Moshe zelianu vehamaru Adonai yimloch Le'olam Vaed. We turn to page 43 at the bottom. Give us a place to rest, Adonai, our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over Jerusalem, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Vishamru can be found at the top of the next page. Vishamru meneh Berit olam, berit olam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti leolam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti leolam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim et haaretz ubayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti leolam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti leolam. V'shameru bnei Yisrael et hashabbat asot et hashabbat ledorotam. Berit olam, berit olam. At this time, we will begin our standing prayer. This is the central part of our service. We turn to page 46, and we all rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach upi agita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Mekonei Hakol, Bezocher Chasdei Avot v'Imachot, Umevii Geula livnei bneihem, Leman Shemo ve'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah Rav lehoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechakel chayim bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim berofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umakayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umidom elach, melech memit u'mechayeh u'matzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman ata l'hachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yihalelucha salah Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. We continue to page 62 silently. You may be seated when you're finished. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amacha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amacha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rav Yisrael Amacha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rav Yisrael Amacha Tasim Leolam Ki ata u'melech Adon lechol ha'shalom Ki ata u'melech Adon lechol ha'shalom Shalom Rav Yisrael Amacha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rav Yisrael Amacha Tasim Leolam V'tov b'necha levarech et Amacha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך Shalom Rav Yisrael Amacha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rav Yisrael Amacha Tasim Leolam Baruch Adonai, Hamevarech et Amo Yisrael Bashalom. At this time, we are going to move into our Seder Kriyat HaTorah, our Torah service. It is my pleasure to invite up, I'm going to do a little bit of shifting around. Doug, are you happy to carry a Torah for me? Fabulous. So it's my pleasure to invite up Laura Smith and Doug Goodman to open our ark and carry our Torah this evening. We all turn to page 245. And we all rise. Happy is the one who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding, for its value is greater than silver, its yield than fine gold. It is more precious than rubies. No treasure can match it. Page 246. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. Udevar Adonai mirushalayim. Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael B'kedushato. Now I just realized I was remiss. Alina and Sasha, why don't you come up and get our stuffy Torahs? Aw, yes. I promised these two young ladies and then totally forgot about it. So here, before the big moment, there you go. Okay, you stand and do exactly what Doug does, okay? That's Doug. Okay. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo Gadlul Adonai Iti Unerama Shemo Yachdav Lecha Adonai Hagedula V'Hagevura V'Tiferet V'Hanetzach V'Hahod Ki Cho B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz Ki Cho B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz Adonai Hamamlacha Yamid Na'aseh Lechol Rosh Al Shlosha Devarim Al Shlosha Devarim Al Shlosha Devarim Holam Omed Al HaTorah Ve'al Havodah Ve'al Gemilut Chasadim Al HaTorah Ve'al Havodah Ve'al Gemilut Chasadim. You may be seated. This Shabbat, we are well into the excitement of the beginning of the book of Exodus with Parshat Bo. We found out at dinner tonight that this is going to be my youngest child's blob mitzvah, a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah or a blob mitzvah if you're obsessed with blobfish. So we are very excited to hear about all of the amazing plagues and all the things that happen in this particularly gruesome Torah portion. It is my pleasure to invite up Rabbi Myra Soifer for our Aliyah. Ta'amod Miriam bat Shimra v'Pinchas la'aliyah. Shifra v'Pinchas la'aliyah. Okay, let me show you, and then you can get it from here. I am right.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. V'daber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Kadesh li chol b'chor Peter kol rechem bivnei Yisrael ba'adam uvavhema lihu. Vayomer Moshe el ha'am zachor et hayom hazeh asher yatzatem miMitzrayim mibeit avadim ki b'chozek yad hotzi Adonai etchem mizeh velo yeachel chametz. Hayom atem yotzim b'chodesh ha'aviv.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch Ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Don't run away too quick. I've got a blessing for you.
Goody, I like that.
May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless you since you have come up to Torah in honor of God and Torah. May you merit from the Holy One of blessing, protection, rescue from any trouble or distress, and from any illness, minor or serious. May God send blessing and success in your every endeavor, together with all Israel. And let us all say, Amen. Thank you.
Here's a go.
At this time, with the Torah in our midst, we think of those in our community who are in need of healing, whether it be a healing of body or a healing of spirit. We wish them a refuah shlema. We are especially thinking of Wendy Alderman, Harav Binyamin Ben Yaakov Vibracha, Joan Brickman, Neil Calder, Laura Cohen, Stephen Gold, Al Grossman, Marlene Harris, Ken Hecht, Harvey Higdon, Laura Jawad, Julius Katz, Harav Miriam Bat Shifra V'Pnichas, Harav Miriam Yael Chaya Bat Sarah, Jackson McKenna Morgan Ramirez, Judy Ramos, Shirley Retkovitz, Sarah Bat Chava, Marianne Schenker, Jessica Wadatz, Paula Wolf, Usher Zalik, Tim Ober, and of course, everyone currently affected by the coronavirus. If there are other names that you would like to add at this time, please do so in the comments if you're online or here in person as my hands go over you. Alan Gray.
Charles, your teacher.
Great combo.
Jerry Spear. For all those whose names that we've mentioned aloud or whose names remain in our hearts, we wish them a refuah shlema with our song of healing on page 253. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaber avotenu mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Sandra, do you mind coming up and helping me with Galila? I'll do the Hagbah part. All you have to do is help me dress the Torah. Thank you. It's my pleasure to invite up Sandra Goodman to help me with Hagbah and Galila. We all rise, and you can follow along on page 252. All right, I'm going to hand that to you.
Of course.
Thank you very much. V'zot haTorah shesam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael. Api Adonai b'yad Moshe. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. V'zot haTorah shesam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael. Api Adonai b'yad Moshe. Dai 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 dai. Just hang on. Dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Page 257. It's always nice to have choir members in there in the congregation. They'll take over for me when I'm out of breath. 257. When Torah entered the world, freedom entered it. The whole Torah exists only to establish peace.
Its highest teaching is love and kindness. What is hateful to you is not anymore.
That is the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary. Go and learn it. Those who study Torah are the true guardians of civilization.
Honoring one another, doing acts of kindness, and making peace. These are our highest duties. But the study of Torah is equal to them all because it leads to them all.
Let us learn in order to teach. Let us learn in order to do. Page 256. You want to take that? It's Chaim Hi Lama Chazikim Ba Betomcha Meushar Terachecha Dorfeno Bechol Tivotah Shalom Hashibenu Adonai Elecha b'nashuva Chadish Chadish Yameinu Chadish Yameinu Kekedem. You may be seated. While reading the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus, I have been looking at the characters of Pharaoh and the Egyptians a little bit differently this year. Parshat Bo begins with Pharaoh's hardened heart, something that I have many times noticed and got stuck on before. I usually am focused on the fact that after Pharaoh initially hardens his own heart once, God eventually does it for him the next few times. making him continue to refuse Moses and Aaron's requests for the Israelites to leave. This year, however, I was struck by a different interchange, the one between Pharaoh and his courtiers. Moses and Aaron appear before the Pharaoh, asking him to let the Israelites go, and then warning him that locusts will devour Egypt, both outside the field and inside the Egyptians' homes. And then Moses and Aaron abruptly leave without waiting for an answer from the king. This plague, we don't hear from the Pharaoh. Instead, we only hear from the Pharaoh's courtiers, who advise him to let the Israelite men go. And afterwards, they say to their king, "Don't you know that Egypt is destroyed?" Chizkuni tells us that the Pharaoh's servants recognized what the Pharaoh did not or could not. That if Egypt were to be ruined in keeping their own status quo and keeping their slaves enslaved, in the end, Pharaoh would have no choice still but to give in. So why not give in now, while Egypt could still be a whole and functioning nation? Pharaoh's courtiers identified the essence of his problem 7 plagues in. The fact that the citizens identified the problem early, that Pharaoh refused to see that what he was fighting was bigger than he could control, somehow this year feels much more familiar. Because many of our problems today are big. They are way bigger than me. They are way bigger than us, and they're bigger than most of the groups that we are all a part of. I'm talking racism big, pandemic big, climate change big. And let me be clear, in this analogy, we are the Egyptian people. We're not Moses, we're not Aaron or the Israelites. Like the Egyptian people, many of these problems are often problems that existed well before we were born. The sins of racism or of climate change weren't our idea. And I think the Egyptians would have felt the same. After all, they had kept the Israelites in slavery for 400 years. So why now should they let them go? The centrifugal pull of the status quo is so strong. We often know exactly what it is that has to be done to fix our big problems. But when we see those solutions, really see them, and see how much we'll need to change and how much we will need to sacrifice in order to get there, so often our courage leaves us, and we decide to just go back to our normal lives again. You know, climate change is a perfect example of this pull towards normal. We have been talking about this in as mainstream as newspapers for 200 years. The greenhouse effect was discovered well over 100 years ago in 1895. The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, was established in 1988. I was 4 years old. We have had generations to deal with our problem back when it was a small one. Before climate change, like the Israelites in Shemot, grew to be too big for us. We began to see plagues. The first one I remember was the hole in the ozone layer. Plagues that we caused through the use of aerosols. And like the people of Egypt, people were suffering and begging our leaders to do something. And lucky for us, slowly they gave in. They put in the legislation that was necessary, and that one small crisis abated, much like the dead frogs that finally decomposed on the shores of the Nile. But we, like Pharaoh and Egypt, we're still missing the point. I remember listening to NPR at one point in 2006, driving home from college. The two headlines that day were a review of Al Gore's book, An Inconvenient Truth, and a report on Marketplace about how expensive gasoline had become in the last year. I remember that dissonance being so jarring to me at the time. I was young and I did not understand the pull of the status quo. Now, strangely, almost 2 decades older, I can see it for what it is. It's fear. It's a lot of inertia. It's not wanting to lose what is so comfortable to us. But we all reach a tipping point, each of us individually, where the status quo is no longer tolerable or justifiable. And like Pharaoh's servants, we need to be able to find our voice and ask our leaders to do what we know needs to be done. Because what we don't want to say is, after all, don't you know that this world we have has been destroyed? Pharaoh's servants tolerated the contamination of their water supply and one of their deities. They tolerated a frog infestation. They tolerated lice and flies and pestilent livestock. They tolerated boils all over their skin and hail, all before saying, enough. You're our leader. Make this stop before it gets worse. The people of Egypt didn't need their crops destroyed by locusts. They didn't need to be plunged into isolation and darkness. And had Pharaoh listened, the firstborn would never have died. The people got it after plague 7, but the Pharaoh stretched it out. I think many of us have recently felt like those Egyptian courtiers, begging for those above us in the hierarchy to make the right choices for a better and more liberatory world, if only for the selfish reason of saving our own skin from further discomfort and tragedy. But the status quo has become untenable, and I don't think anybody here needs me to say it. We all need to examine the world and our place in it, and push our leaders before we need to say that we've been destroyed. We do not need to go through famine and darkness and death if we only use our voices to make our leaders listen. Shabbat Shalom. It is my pleasure to invite up Rob and Holly to open up our Ark doors. We turn to page 282 for the Aleinu. We'll be at the bottom of the page. We all rise. Thank you both. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotze bereshit, shelo asanu kevoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sama chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kefo hamonam, va'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech, malchei hamachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Page 284. Shehu noteh shamayim v'yosed haaretz, u'moshav yikarav hashamayim v'imahal, u'shchinatu zo, v'gover meromim, hu Eloheinu ein od, emet mokeinu efes ulato, rakatu v'torah Hashevota levavecha, ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim, asher hamayim mimaha, ve'haaretz mitachat enon. Page 287. V'nemar v'hayadonai l'melech al kol haaretz. Vayom hahu yeh Adonai echad. U'shemo echad. You may be seated. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. At this time, if you are online, please feel free to add your loved ones' names. We are also remembering Deborah Dunieff Kessel, Elizabeth Ruth Rassler, James Cross, Peter A. Alsberg, PhD, Eileen Jenkins, Selma Four, Steve Strauss, Andrew Verratti, Donna Matlis, Charlie Perlman, Rabbi Michael Cook, PhD, Sharon Perlman, Millie Small, Alan Dabrow, William Leibovic, Jim Valentine, Eli Kane, David Stucker, Terry Gregory, Grayson Corbett, Joan Nutkin, Andrew Venuti, Gerald Kaufman, Goldie Brewstein, Lucille Alexander, Stanley Browdy, and Edna Bailey. We're also commemorating the yard sites of Betty Jo Blauner, Andy Getz, Sadie Quassman, Norma Morhar, Lily E. Zabolski, Hyman Leventhal, Ruth Alderman, Sid Aaron Cohen, John McGregor, Dorothy Reich, Inga Kaplan, Alan M. Greenblatt, Matthew Boris McKean, Abner Sable, Hadassah Small, Leah Kahn Garrell, and Millard Petersky. If there are other names that you would like to add, please do so as my hand moves over you. RJ? Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. We turn to page 294 for the mourner's Kaddish, Kaddish Yatom. If it is your custom, please rise. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon uvyom achon, uvchaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudisha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama Rabbah min Shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all those who mourn. And together we say, Amen. You may be seated. It is my pleasure to invite up Laura Smith, our chair of the Jewish Practice Committee, to offer us a few announcements.
Hello, all. If you are joining us online tonight, please stick around for Yisma Zoom, hosted by Laura Ashkin and Chris Stanton. You can visit sinaireno.org/all caps live for details on how to join. Please also join us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Torah study via Zoom. They are studying Genesis 32:2 at, I'm sure, a rapid pace.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. On Sunday, if you have kiddos, Sinai school is off this week. There is also a new time if you are joining us for Sacred Sinai, the resource for LGBTQIA plus community Jewish resources. That is now at 3 p.m. Please join Rabbi Sarah Zilber and Tanya Naraki.
Well done.
Thank you. Next weekend is exciting. We will, of course, have Friday services one way or the other, most likely with Rabbi Myra leading. Thank you. And then on Sunday, January 16th, we will be holding our Tu B'Shvat Seder via Zoom at 7 p.m. Please join us for that. And then Monday, MLK Day, January 17th, Rabbi Sarah Leah Schley will be starting her 3-part series, The Heart Knows Its Own Bitterness. Please register at sinaireno.org/the-heart-knows. Thanks.
Many thanks to Laura for being our greeter and Aliyah getter today. Many thanks to both Crystal and Michael, who have been manning our technology for all of you at home and making sure that you are all integrated well into our service. And thank you, as always, to Tracy and Crystal and Heather and the whole family for getting our oneg, our to-go neg. This is my husband's terrible puns again, for everyone after services. Our closing song can be found on page 328. This is one of my favorite little PU team, our We Are the Best Torah Darshanim Smackdown song. So please join. If you don't know it, you'll pick it up pretty easily. Mipiel, Mipiel, Yevorach Kol Yisrael. Mipiel, Mipiel, Yevorach Kol Yisrael. Ein nadir ka'Adonai, ve'ein baruch keven Amram. Ein gedola ka'Torah, ve'ein darshaneha ka'Yisrael. Mipiel, Mipiel, Yevorach Kol Yisrael. Mipiel, Mipiel, Yevorach Kol Yisrael. Ein hador ka'Adonai, ve'ein bati keven Amram. Ein zakar ka'Torah, ve'ein chachameha ka'Yisrael. Mipiel, Mipiel, Yevorach Kol Yisrael. Mipiel, Mipiel, Yevorach Kol Yisrael. Ein tahor ka'Adonai, ve'ein yachid keven Amram. Ein kabira ka'Torah, ve'ein lamdaneha ka'Yisrael. Mipiel, Mipiel, Yevorach Kol Yisrael. Mipiel, Mipiel, Yevorach Kol Yisrael. Ein podek Adonai, ein tzadik keven Amram. Ein kedosha ka'Torah, ve'ein tomcheha ka'Yisrael. Mipiel, Mipiel, Yevorach Kol Yisrael. Mipiel, Mipiel, Yevorach Kol Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Have a wonderful and peaceful Shabbat. Oh, let's do Kiddush and Motzi. That way we can do our thing. Okay. All right, if you'd like to follow along, you can follow along on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'aratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'bratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'mahaseh bereshit כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. לחיים. We had a little round one today. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom b'teavon, everyone.